wanted to come back on and talk more in depth about reflection and the importance of reflection, and how reflection is really the base of whether you move ahead or don't. Like, if you're not able to reflect, if you're not able to look at your behaviour, if you're not able to pay attention to how you maneuver in the world, then it makes it very difficult to navigate, unless you are only thinking about yourself. And obviously, different people's brains work in different ways, and that's absolutely fine. But I guess the point in terms of reflection when it comes to self-love, you're able to reflect on your behaviour and to understand and ascertain whether your behaviour is harmful to you or is a benefit to you. And I think what we really don't acknowledge is how deep our childhood wounding trauma can run. So when you get into adulthood, from 1 on the clock, I think now 30s, to me, if I look at like years in age groups and stuff, so 0 to 10, like you're literally just learning. Forgive the banging, someone's banging. But yeah, 0 to 10, you're literally learning from scratch, right? 10 to 20, you're put into scenarios that you have like no idea how to handle. For example, secondary school was a completely different experience from primary school, and then you've got to also take into account what kind of secondary school you went to, and or if you're homeschooled, because then socialization is very different, right? Which impacts immediately the way that you navigate the world. And so if you're around a group of people that behave in a way, and you have to acclimatise to that, you have to also conform to that in order to survive, it completely changes your approach to life. So that's what 10 to 20. 20 to 30, you are you're still brand new. 20 to 30, you're still brand new because you're still navigating, you're still trying to, find your footing. 20 to 30, at least in our society, you're kind of told that that's like your biggest point of like trying to build this career, blah 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 blah. And I think it's so important, and this is also why reflection is great, because actually if we live like that, then we're living in a rush, a constant rush. You're constantly rushing because you're constantly being made to feel as if there's no time, and as if your life is running out, and if you don't hit these benchmarks by a certain point or at the same time as your peers or whatever else, then there's something wrong with you. And I think that way of thinking is so dangerous, and even that way of living, like honestly, I feel like what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing, what can be seen, I think, if you look at like the world and the way it's playing out, is that all these ways that we've been told to be and how to be, etc etc etc, may have worked with previous generations, 3 on the clock, but aren't necessarily true to the new generations that come in. And so we find ourselves in a battle almost, because the younger generations come with new ideas, new ways of being, want to do things differently, and then they're met by the older generations who try and put a lid on everything, try and stop you from being who you are, try to make you conform to their ways, and then there's no space for actual growth. And so I think even research is now showing that the brain actually develops a lot later than we've been saying it has for a long time. And so if we take a moment to reflect, between your 20s and 30s, even before that, if you're in environments that mean you drink, take drugs, do anything to avoid yourself because you've never been given the time to actually know who you are. And I say to know who you are because I feel like obviously we know who we are to a degree, but I think when you're heavily influenced by your environment and what's happening outside, you know who you are for 4 on the clock based on what's been projected onto you, whether that's good or bad. I think particularly when I was growing up, there was always this emphasis on like girls being hoes and blah 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 blah, and never like this reflection, keyword here, on like actually how boys behave. And so it's like a lot of it is projection. Like girls are being called hoes because of the way they behave, but it's completely ignored the way boys behave. And then people learn early to manipulate love and to abuse love, and it's actually quite scary because if you look back from wherever you are, but if you look back, it's like between 10 and 20, 20 and 30, that's such a young age to be like mistreating people already in your life. And so what that shows you reflecting is that that's obviously what you've been taught. Your environment, 555 on the clock, all the numbers today. Your environment has shown you repeatedly that that's the way you need to behave in order to get by, and I think it's such a shame. And I really believe it's such a pivotal time. Like, we have such a window of opportunity to do things differently now and to actually be the change. And while some people would argue that, you know, oh, well, you can't change the world and blah blah blah, but guess what? You can change. You can change yourself. And I believe that if each individual focused more on themselves, on loving themselves, truly loving themselves, not loving yourself is not a gimmick, like truly loving yourself, that has an impact on the world. I think every generation, every child that's born has an impact on the world, has the ability to impact the world as we know it, because they're brand new, they're fresh. The problem is, and what the problem has been for generations after generations after generations, is that we're kept on a loop. We're kept stuck in repeat and doing things in the same way, because this is how it was, or because some old man wants to keep telling the rest of the world that they're better than everyone else, or whatever it is. There's some form of patriarchal control, just and constant lies between one another. I think it's important to reflect on the bonds between people. It's important to, every single day, pay attention to the choices that you're making and how those choices are informing how you progress. Like, it really does matter, and it is really every single day. Because if every single day you're choosing to do things that are harmful to you or to other people, then you get good at that. You could even argue that this is why some people continue down a road of like dysfunction or whatever. And obviously we're looking at this from a standpoint of not looking at mental health at this moment in time. But it's like, if people are used to practicing, you get used to practicing anything you get used to practicing, you get better at, right? So if you practice loving yourself, you get better at loving yourself. And what happens when you love yourself? You raise your standards, you believe in yourself, your mindset changes, the way you think about things becomes different. You know, you need to give yourself enough time to really be with yourself, and this is unfortunately something that we are not afforded right now in society. And I think actually it could be a UK thing, because obviously you go to some other countries, Caribbean for example, the pace is much slower. Like, life is much slower, and it's not just the Caribbean. I'm sure there are other countries in the world. That's the only place that I know I've been to that I can refer to at this moment in time. But there are other places in the world where it's not so rushed. Like, you're not rushing through your life to get to where are you rushing to? And if I'm really honest, I think that rushing is just something that's become habit because people aren't happy with their lives, and so you're rushing to get away from this life that you've created for yourself. And that's the key element. You have actively participated in this life that you're creating for yourself, and you continue to do so every single day. And so back to the topic of this, which is reflection. It is so important to reflect regularly on where you're going, how you're going, why you're behaving in such a way, you know, how certain things played out. And a lot of it is about reflecting retrospectively, because that's how you learn. You know, you have to make the mistakes in order to learn. But my 10 minutes is up, so I'm going to leave it here. But reflection. It's important.